Born to Belonging. People who imagine that history flatters them, as it does indeed since they wrote it, are impaled on their history like a butterfly on a pin, and become incapable of seeing or changing themselves or the world. This is the place in which it seems to me most white Americans find themselves, impaled. They are dimly or vividly aware that the history they have fed themselves is mainly a lie, but they do not know how to release themselves from it, and they suffer enormously from the resulting personal incoherence. James Baldwin, The White Man's Guilt, Ebony Magazine, August, 1965. It is nothing if not difficult to know where to begin when you first sit down to trace the story of your life. Does your life begin on the day you came into this world, or does it begin before that, with the lives of your family members, without whom you would never have existed? For me, there is only one way to answer the question. My story has to begin before the day I entered the world, October 4th of 1968, for I did not emerge onto a blank slate of neutral circumstance. My life was already a canvas upon which older paint had begun to dry long before I arrived. My parents were already who they were, with their particular life experiences, and I was to inherit those whether I liked it or not. When we first draw breath outside the womb, we inhale tiny particles of all that came before, both literally and figuratively. We are never merely individuals. We are never alone. We are always in the company of others, of the past, of history. We become part of that history just as surely as it becomes part of us. There is no escaping it. There are merely different levels of coping. It is how we bear the past that matters, and in many ways it is all that differentiates us. I was born amidst great turmoil, none of which had been of my own making, but which I could hardly have escaped in any event. My mother had carried me throughout all of the great upheavals of that tumultuous year, 1968, perhaps one of the most explosive and monumental years in 20th century America. She had carried me through the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy, through the decision by President Johnson not to seek re-election in the midst of the unfolding murderous quagmire in Southeast Asia, and through the upheaval in the streets of Chicago during that year's Democratic Party convention. I think that any child born in 1968 must, almost by definition, be especially affected by the history that surrounded him or her upon arrival. There was too much energy floating around not to have left a mark. Once born, I inherited my family and all that came with it. I also inherited my nation and all that came with that. And I inherited my race and all that came with that, too. In all three cases, the inheritance was far from inconsequential. Indeed, all three inheritances were connected, intertwined in ways that are all too clear today. To be the child of Michael Julius Wise and Lucinda Ann McLean Wise meant something. To be born in the richest and most powerful nation on earth meant something. And to be white, especially in the United States, most assuredly meant something. A lot of things, truth be told. What those inheritances meant and still mean is the subject of this inquiry, especially the last of these. What does it mean to be white in a nation created for the benefit of people like you? We don't often ask this question, mostly because we don't have to. Being a member of the majority, the dominant group, allows one to ignore how race shapes one's life. For those of us called white, whiteness simply is. Whiteness becomes, for us, the unspoken, uninterrogated norm, taken for granted much as water can be taken for granted by a fish.